Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special panel for Bionicle Day. That's right, this is Founders Panel. We have quite an assortment of guests here today, but first, without further ado, I will be one of your hosts, Eljay D. Johnson, and joining me,
I am Nick Hartman, also known as Lehari.
And today we've got quite the event for all of you. As you can see, we have 6 panelists today, so allow me to introduce them. Some of them need no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I am a professional. First off, needing no introduction, he is the author of dozens of Bionicle novels and comics, and as far as we are aware, the current editorial director of the Lego Company. It is, of course, Greg Farshty.
Hello, LJ.
Next up, the former art director for Advance, and the man who has gifted us many of the artistic liberties and creations to the worlds we called home. It is, of course, Christian Faber.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Our next panelist is a design manager for the Lego Group from 2000 to 2002, eventually leaving in 2005, but making a triumphant return in 2011. It is Martin Anderson.
Hey, good to see you all.
Our next panelist is an author from the UK, writer and producer well known for his involvement with the Bionicle theme. However, also a developer for his own series, including the multiverse of Max Tovey and The Flying Monk. It is, of course, Alistair Swinnerton.
Hello there. Well, I might say those aren't series, they are novels. Currently available on Amazon. Thank you very much.
Maybe we want them to be series.
I know. Yeah, BSO1 needs a bit of an edit.
We'll make sure that it's updated and get a link to those on the publication for this.
Too kind.
Next up, this man you may know for his work on multiple comic series: Dark Horse's Star Wars, Death Blow, and Batman Arkham City. But if you are here, chances are you know him for his incredibly impressive work on the Bionicle comic series from 2001 to 2002. It is, of course, Carlos de Anda.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And finally, last but certainly not least, a man that has been notorious for years, nay, possibly even decades, graduate of the University of Wales College and spending 7 years with the BBC, and of course, once described as the George Lucas of Bionicle. It is, of course, Bob Thompson.
Hi, thank you. That's an introduction you don't get every day, so thank you, Eljay.
All right. That went much better than I had actually prepared for back before we started recording, so I'm very glad. Thank you all so very much for joining us here today. It is truly a pleasure and a spectacular honor to get to sit with you all this morning.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Good to be here.
All right, so we have plenty of questions and not a lot of time to get to them, so let's go ahead and start things off. Would you guys like to kind of talk a little bit about the beginning of why we're all here today? Obviously, we're celebrating Bionicle's 20th anniversary, something that not many Lego themes or many anythings get to often celebrate. So kind of start us off at the beginning. How did this all come together?
I guess that's down to Christian and Martin.
First of all, a long time ago. That means that all of us are also 20 years older now. So that alone is quite interesting. I think a bunch of us haven't met since those early days. And now meeting here, like we've done for the last year and a half virtually, that's just the norm. But hey, yeah, it started as a toy, and then it just became much more than a toy. I think actually looking around the table here, I think in this room, Christian, you have been on board longest, starting with the slicer and even sort of earlier Lego ventures built leading into that. So yeah, maybe a recap, Christian. Where did it all start? Because it didn't start Bionicle. It started with some steps prior to that.
Yeah, but it's so amazing to sit here with all of you, and good to meet you again. And just to say, it's been, definitely Bionicle has been life-changing for me, both in looking creatively at how to do work and how to interact with people and how to connect and so on. It's on every level, and it's actually a part of an amazing journey. I think it's, if you look at different levels, you look at the Lego company, the journey that the Lego company has been on from being struggling, in the beginning of the new century, and all the learnings that everybody here took from all those struggles and put it into something that gave sort of a total new look at things. And personally, for me, it's actually being able to work with amazing people and amazing IPs. I remember working with mentioning Star Wars when Lego opened up towards Star Wars. I think that was the first of saying, okay, we can use storytelling for something amazing here, and giving inspiration, and also opening everybody's eyes to new ways of communicating with kids and so on. And all the way to Lego being this world phenomenon and leading brands on so many levels. I think it's an adventure all on its own, being part of it. Not only telling the stories and everything that's happening in Bionicle and all the other properties, but just being part of this amazing journey and sitting here with you. It's I don't know how to put it into words. Basically, but hopefully we can do it through this interview in different ways. But I'm just grateful being part of this on my behalf. So
But it started with a germ of an idea of yours, I think, Christian.
Yeah, but I think the whole thing about working with Lego, it's so inspirational also to be an adult, being able to use play as your work tool. It's so privileged, I think, but also being able to pass that on to new generations. That's definitely what I'm trying to do now in my sort of senior years, trying to invent new stuff and so on. But it's such a privilege to be able to have creativity as your work path, and I think that is what Lego inspires. But just to go into the beginning for my part,
Christian, just hold your horses a second, Christian.
Yeah, sorry.
You're, just to share with the rest of you, and also for all of you out there who experienced Bionicle from the other side of just being on the receiving end of it, I can totally echo what you're saying here, Christian, because also going through the questions you guys had collected for us today, I think my fondest memory is the fact that this was true co-creation before that word even sort of got into business. It was a bunch of creatives getting excited, getting around the table, and then just building on each other, and being fine with building on each other, being fine with not having the super oracle sitting in a corner dictating everything, but actually co-creating and making a massive mashup that ended up being Bionicle. So I think that's definitely my key takeaway. So I can only echo that, Christian.
Yeah, I think very much it was very, very much a team effort, and I think that's one of the kind of, I mean, there's six of us in this panel, but there could have been 40 people in this panel that all had something unique that added to that voice that became. I think if there's one thing that I remember from our first meeting, Martin, I was about 2 weeks into the job at Lego, and I'd been given one brief, and this just doesn't happen in other companies. It's one of the nice things about Lego. It's we've hired you, and your job is to make Lego something children can talk about with friends. It's like, what a fantastically open-ended brief. Now, here's a salary. Now go figure out how to do it. There was really, really very, very little management interference in what we were doing, and it allowed us to be really creative. It's I don't know if anyone else would echo the same thing, but that was my looking back on those times. I've never had that freedom in any other organization.
No, there was. I never felt any sort of interference, I have to say, and the team was extraordinary, right from games to toys to merchandising to the guys who did the blurb on the packets. I mean, it was one giant project of all of the made up of all of these parts, and without one of those parts it would have fallen apart. They were all equally as important as any others.
I feel like that's a really great kind of starting off point for us to get into some kind of formative questions. So we have, again, plenty of them. I think we should definitely start off with one that has plagued the Bionicle community for many years. It's something that has led to countless debates. Some might even say major conflicts, battles, if I may. It's one that burns in the hearts of Bionicle fans across the world, and it is, truly. It's pronounced Liwa, right, guys?
Yes, it's pronounced Liwa.
We have it on record. BSO 1 will be updated accordingly.
I think it is.
There we go.
Hey!
Culture.
Just having that on hand. That's very nice.
Mine is buried. That's okay. In any case, though, we do have a bunch of questions, a handful for the group and a bunch for individuals. So we're going to kind of go one. So first, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have a question. Since it's been many years since kind of the community side of things have heard from you, heard what you've been up to, what you've been doing, but you've obviously had a huge impact in kind of shaping the way that the theme went. After your departure in 2005, we do have a question from Joax900, who asks, did you ever kind of keep up with it after it ended? And if so, roughly how much of the later direction in the story would you say was stuff that had been kind of in the planning phase during your tenure, and roughly how much of it was new, if you kept up with it?
Oh God, and you asked me this question in front of Greg as well.
We take no
So, the way that there's this kind of idea that the books were planned out in great detail going forward for years and years, and there were 60-page Bibles for every kind of story theme for the next 7 years. That was just didn't exist. What there existed was the idea that there was a plot and a story arc that took place over a great deal of time, and then what we would do is we would plot out this is how TV shows work as well. You plot out the journey of the different seasons. You plot out the long arc of your characters or your universe or whatever you're going to do. And then you largely throw that away every year and create new stuff and make it kind of fit in with that logic. So there's, because everything the current project I'm working on started out being an adventure story and landed up being a detective story after 10 drafts of the script. There's a creative process and there's a journey, and the more that you have a collaboration, really what you set out is the idea of the 7 books was a guide, it was a guiding journey, and it never really was that specific. So what happened afterwards is the creative work of all of the great team that worked on it afterwards. There was an arc and a journey for the characters to take, but that carried on. And I know because a lot of that stuff that came from Christian about the early idea of Matanui kind of being the face of the the face island of that greater creature. That was all. That's what the 7 books was really about. It was about the rising of Matanui. But was it penned out as 60-page books for everyone to follow like a manuscript each year? No, totally not.
So
it was about the creativity of the individual teams that were working on those new projects.
You mean my holy grail hunt has been for naught? I mean, no one's going to find the sacred documents?
You might find that there's a document somewhere that says book 7 and it'll be about a page long.
Dang it.
with some ideas and notes on what that's going to be. But obviously the other 700 pages is in Alistair's mind because or on some sketchbooks that Christian has, or in some CAD drawings on Martin's desktop somewhere on a floppy disk from back then. That stuff maybe all exists, but it didn't certainly exist in one place.
You and the fans a little bit along that line. The intention was very much to create call it a flexible universe. We didn't call it back then, but having this container where you could plot in all these different stories and products and ideas and have a lot of flexibility and to have things evolve basically along the way. we didn't set up a rigid structure from day one, except some key elements. And Christian, I think that's a very good leeway to you, because some of those key events is definitely coming from your hand. It guided the universe.
Yeah, but you can also say that for me it was the first attempt of really doing world building, where I think the main idea about world building is that you actually you agree on living in that world yourself, and it's almost like exploring something you don't know. You are stepping into this world, and you are walking around there, and you're experiencing things, and depending on what the campaign needs or what the story needs, then you make changes, almost like if you were on an expedition and suddenly something happened that made you go in another direction. I think that world building is actually feeling that you are there and you have to act according to what's needed. But the world is sort of a place where you actually, you can invite people in there. You can take a lot of content from there. But the thing that it exists somewhere and it's something that speaks back to you, I think is really important. And that was the first time I experienced that kind of a journey.
Sorry, go on. I was just going to say, I think we were almost like the characters themselves, in that we were exploring the world as much as they were, and finding out what and discovering it. It was certainly an evolving thing.
So every time that any players that I have at the table complain about a game master style like that, I'm just going to send them this video, because I agree wholeheartedly. I do have one sort of side question related to the 7 books. Out of anything that would have been in them, is there anything that didn't make it into the final run that you guys would have wanted to actually run with, that just didn't wind up working due to the Confluent process you guys have been using?
I have no idea. This question for Greg.
A million and a bazillion things.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Any large elements, like were there any arcs changed radically or thrown out?
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. We did that every year.
Okay.
The way of, if you look at storytelling as a creative process, it's like film editing. Most of it lands up on the cutting room floor, and what you're left with is the really good stuff that works. You have loads of great ideas, loads of brilliant concepts, but you have to choose the ones that fit and work and deliver the best story and the best experience each time you do it. That's creative. That's what creativity is about. Anyone else is gonna. There's loads of good stuff left.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously it's interesting. I'm biased. I find this immensely interesting. But I'm curious. So many people that sent us in questions, they were very interested in some of the greater dichotomy, because obviously there were multiple sides to all of this. There's product, there were games, there were novels. Some of our viewers send in some questions pertaining to kind of an often just a really important part of the theme, and one that almost in some ways gets taken for granted, the comics. So when it came to the comics, they are obviously one of the main pillars of visual media for Bionicle, in a franchise that didn't have as much as some might expect it would, even with all of the depth to it. So Mr. Farstein, Thompson, Donda, would you kind of elaborate on how that side of the franchise, that pillar of things, all kind of worked in with everything else, kind of some of the creative processes of that, and how it influenced and added and built on to everything that was being done in the writer's room?
Well, the mandate that I had for the comics was that it had to focus on the Toa, because a lot of the website was focusing on the Matoran, with the Matoran games. And the comic very much had to sort of reflect main story in the early years. In the later years, it was also being used to do things like promote combination builds. So the biggest challenge that I had was the cast was huge, and they wanted me to get as many characters into the comic as I could, because they wanted to show as many sets in the comic as they could. So it was a big challenge to get everybody enough screen time. in the story so that it didn't just feel like a bunch of cameos. But yeah, I mean, the novels were mainly side story, with the exception of the movie novelizations. But the comics pretty much had to reflect main story.
Interesting. So it's so what was some of that kind of working dichotomy? Like, Mr. Don, what would you do to kind of set things up on your end? But what would you need from the story side of things so that the two worked to produce what ended up being the main visual story?
For me, right, the story would come from the writer, but I think on my end, what took me a little while to figure out was how do you make a toy feel alive, right? So some simple things you take for granted, like, you know, the for the script it would say character X grabs something, and then you realize they don't have any hands. So it's like, some of the simple first things was can the little like tubes that they have for hands, can they grasp onto things? So you have to create an internal set of rules of how these characters would move, right? And that takes a little bit to kind of figure out the dynamics of how that would be. So if you have a character swinging through the tree vines, well, how would it grab the vines, for example, right? And those were like really more my end of things. Like, how do I draw these characters to make them feel like they're alive, right? Mm-hmm. So that was like my main challenge in terms of how to draw this toy, you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't say you had any knowledge of kind of the overarching plots, like for instance the great spirit robot under the island kind of coming up at any point, or?
I had general knowledge of it based on the briefings I got from at the time DC Comics, right? But I'm also the kind of artist that doesn't want to find out too much, because I want to be surprised as I read the story. Because then if you know too much, you kind of spoil yourself, right? So as I'm drawing it, I also want to be finding out what's going on to an extent. So it's like I knew the general scope of it. But yeah, it's like I also try not to spoil myself too much with too much information. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I know, Mr. Farshi, you've kind of talked about a similar concept, kind of just waiting to find out kind of what the characters do and waiting to find out what happens before you find out about it. So it's kind of a surprise. It kind of reveals itself in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't write from outlines. I don't believe in outlines. I feel like that as a writer, I feel that they constrict you and you get lazy because you're not saying, well, what should happen here? You're going with, well, what does the outline say happens here? So, you know, if I write a mystery, I have no idea who did it till I get to the end. And then I go back and go, oh, well, yeah, that's right. There are all the clues. That was who did it, you know. But the best stuff I've ever written has been stuff that I had no idea I was going to write that day.
Okay, interesting.
I just have a quick process follow-up for Mr. Danda. Over the course of developing all of the fundamental rules of how you want your characters to move and work and exist in the world, did you only ever use the official interpretations, like the official art of those characters, or did you like sketch out your own Toa, your own Matoran, your own whatever over the course of that development?
I would for my own way to understand how the characters would move, right? Because something that I realized also is that so much thought went into designing how, you know, like the piston on the characters would work to move, you know, the arm, etc. So just to understand how to emote, right? Something as simple as like, well, think it also like whenever you're working on a property this big, although at the time it was like this weird new property that, right, you know, it's like before it became like the big thing.
Yeah.
but I think you have to establish a trust between the publisher and you, right? Like, so the first few drawings were a lot more like here's the figure, and I'm gonna draw it as exact as possible, and then as you and the publisher gain each other's trust, now you can start playing with things a little bit more, right? Okay. So then like now the eyes can maybe be more expressive, and it doesn't break the toy in a sense, right? So then the more you draw it, the more you start to see what you can play with. And my at the time I was working through Wildstorm, and Jim Lee, who was the head honcho there, right, of X-Men fame. I remember him saying that when he drew X-Men, he would always try to make the characters a little bit his, meaning that you start to feel like you can inject a little bit of your personality into them, right? Because then that also makes it more fun to play with that. And it was very similar in this sense, right? Where initially you do want to be very respectful to the way it looks, but then the more you draw it, you start kind of like almost becoming friends with it, right? And it's like, oh, I can move a little bit with this, and so that was really part of how I did have a few sketches of me just seeing like, well, how do the feet work? How can the torso rotate, etc. Like those kinds of things, just to give myself an internal Bible of how I could draw them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think
I can talk to you about that a lot, but I'm gonna restrain myself.
That really works very well, actually. And too, another question we had. This was sent in from the letter U, and in a lot of numbers. But this is
that guy.
This was directed toward Mr. Anderson, and I think this is kind of a good question to lead into the product side of things as well, because obviously we got a lot of ground to cover, so we kind of want to touch on all different facets because it's all very fascinating. So this question, it starts off, I got to handle a prototype Liwa in the collection of Andre Hurley earlier this year, and I noted the CNC marks left behind the Miru from the rough prototype mold in it that it was cast from, and thought it was a fascinating look into the behind-the-scenes development of the toy. What else can you tell us about the process of taking the concepts of Bionicle toys from rough prototypes to consumer products? What constraints did the team have? What changed over the years? The question asker mentions that the Cow was the only mask designed with CAD software, and the rest were hand sculpted from clay, and they were kind of curious more about that process. Could you kind of elaborate on that? Because I think it leads very well into what Mr. Donda was saying, and Christian, I feel like you might also be able to kind of discuss on this point as well.
Sure. Yeah, of course, it's a massive question, which I could do a full series of lectures on how we intended to do it and what happened in real life. But maybe just to keep it really short and high level, I think it was extremely important, Lego being a toy company, to make a toy that worked as a toy. So before I joined the Bionicle team, or the team that became responsible for running Bionicle, I joined the team around the launch of Robo Riders, and then was in from day one or from very early days on Bionicle. And I'd done Star Wars prior to that, working with being sort of the first product guy, liaising with Lucasfilm on the Star Wars products, and to some degree felt that in those early days it was about getting to know Lucasfilm and how do we do it. And we made a shitload of compromises on the products because it had to look exactly what it looked like in the movie. So we were bending and twisting Lego to the maximum to make it look like Star Wars, X-Wing fighters, whatever. With Bionicle, we had that opportunity of creating it ourselves and really starting with the product and make sure we had a fantastic toy that delivered on the premise of what a good action construction toy should be. So just, it was nailing the core concept. There's a straight line from a lot of concept explorations, but a straight line from slicers over Robo Riders to Bionicle. And then later on, because the whole idea with Slicer and Robo Riders was the idea of in and out fast. We make something, we make a small story around some great products. It's about action, it's about collecting, it's about engaging the kids, and then on to something new. And then we realized that, oh, there's something with the launch of Slicer. There's something working here. There's something sort of lasting. Why sort of flush it all out and then start from scratch all over again? And there started the conversations in a very small group between the very engaged and talented product developers in the team, plus the creative team at Advance, where Christian was, of course, one of the anchor persons. And we started to have these conversations. What if we made it bigger? But it never really compromised building an amazing toy, and the effort and the extent we sort of went to test it with kids, talk with kids, make sure that the price point was right, make sure that the kids could build it, the ball joints, just the engineering going into the ball joint and socket solution from an engineering perspective is a whole adventure on its own. So a lot of effort put into not compromise on a very, very good toy. And then the whole universe started building around that idea. In terms of creative process, very much, you could say, a typical design process. You work on paper, you sketch, you discuss, you dream, you visualize. Just specifically on the masks, back in those days, obviously later in the process, everything moves into CAD/CAM systems to be digitized. But in the early design phases, and 20 years ago, a lot was done in hand, and then in a collaboration with an engineer who was then digitizing the solutions. And then you had a dialogue: what is feasible, what's not feasible, how can we get to the design we want? So again, a lot of iterations to also, and that was one of the key elements. I'll stop it here and bring it on to more questions, but one of the key elements in the development was always speed. So we needed to be able to move fast. We needed to be able to, again, have flexibility. And nobody in those days had the luxury of sort of sitting, cornering, and just having all the time in the world to perfect something. Everything had to move extremely fast without jeopardizing the bigger storyline. So we tried a lot in the product design to keep it somewhat open-ended. And sometimes there was a play function that later got a reason for being, because somebody saw it and figured out, oh, that's interesting, and then build a story around it. And then that fed back to the product designers, and tons of these loops and iterations. But for you could say the detailed design, very classic design and engineering process, if we really sort of get to just the plastic part of Bionicle.
So it's interesting to see how these all kind of interplay and interconnect. And I feel like at that point, because yeah, obviously Bionicle, it attracted a lot of people because of its rich story, and it wasn't just cool robots, but it also had a rich mythology. And I know, Mr. Swinnerton, you brought a lot of influence in for that to kind of bring a lot of these elements to life. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit and how that got woven in as well?
Well, obviously there was, the story had originally been generated within Lego, alongside half a dozen others that landed on my company's desk. Boneheads, as it was originally called, was, I believe, Christian. It came out of your weird and twisted head, I believe, Christian, originally. And then it went into my weird and twisted head, so it didn't stand a chance, really. But I just saw this, the germ of the story. I didn't really change it. It was a world. Somehow that there was a robot underneath the island, and there was a bunch of characters that didn't know why they were there or where they were going. But my job really was to give this a level of complexity, the story, a level of complexity that would last a lot longer, to turn those 3.5 pages, I think it was originally, into a big story Bible with characters who had histories and interactions, and to design the actual, not design artistically, but create literarily how the world worked. To give it those multiple layers of of depth. That was basically my job. But and I drew on, as everybody knows. When I first saw the story, I went, "Oh, Easter Island." Which was a subject that always fascinated me. It just felt like Easter Island. Just the word bonehead just sparked the concept of Easter Island. So when I represented it, I mean, I didn't rewrite it completely. I just sort of repurposed it. I don't know what word you'd use, and sent it back to Bob. I brought the Polynesian aspect into it. I just felt it could be cool to give it a level of sort of reality within our world, as well as being a fantasy world. So an anchor for the story to build on, but also my own a love of mythology generally, which comes from childhood onwards, really. So, what was the question?
No, that got it. That encapsulated everything. That was golden. Now, I guess so. Bionicle 2. We're gonna start getting some Wales influence.
We're on 3 now. You know that.
Hey, we don't talk about 2. All right. So, I think that's another interesting place to kind of move forward, Mr. Thompson. From there, what was your role there? But so, a lot of people know that you had a great deal of influence on the theme in total. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you were the story head for the theme from 2001-2005. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was head of character and story at LEGO, so I was responsible for Bionicle and other things at that time.
Oh, and other things. Yeah. Okay, mental note for later.
But, anyway.
Yeah. So, from that point on, how did you kind of direct the flow of things and kind of help see things progress forward throughout the years?
Well, there were lots of aspects to it. So I guess just to pick up on where Alistair left it, that he sent across a reworking of Christian's original idea, adding in the kind of the Polynesian mythology aspect to it. That arrived on my desk, and this is kind of a weird coincidence, but my grandfather sailed ships around the South Sea Islands. So I picked up on this, and then there was the whole thing in my head that he'd collected lots of dolls that he called tikis. They weren't actually tikis, I've discovered since then, to be culturally correct, but he collected lots of these little wooden dolls, and as a kid I played with them. And so Alistair giving it that flavour, that came back round. And I seem to remember we all went to Copenhagen and landed up in jazz club, and the next morning weren't feeling so good. And that's really for me when Christian's smiling because he remembers that day. And we were
that was a great.
We didn't make good progress on our first day. There was a struggle to find where this story was, and we went out and we had an evening out together. And I think the next morning we somehow bonded as a team. And I think my job really was to direct the multiple different media channels that we were going to have. Christian and Advance were very involved in the advertising side of that. Greg was at that time very involved in the comic and the novelization. But we also had the Leia doing the MMOG games, and we had a computer game in-house team doing PlayStation and Game Boy platforms, and then later the films came along as well, which I went over and looked after because my background was television and film anyway. And so I was really trying to keep, it's a bit like the experience, the analogy I always use is herding cats. You've got a lot of creative people who want to go off in a lot of different interesting creative directions. And somehow the experience of all of those different media channels has to be one franchise, one voice, one consistency. And so managing all of those different, who's going to have which bits of the story, who's going to have all of those, that was really what I was was doing. I was, if you like, making sure everyone was working together, but not working on top of each other and not clashing with each other, but working seamlessly in the same direction.
And seamlessly it was.
Well, for the most part.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you very quickly for that expression, herding cats. I will only ever refer to my friends trying to figure out where to eat as that.
Yeah, it's not originally mine.
I'm pretty sure that's an industry term. Yeah.
No, you didn't have to say that.
It's too late. I'm putting it to you in my life, so
all right.
I just have to. Sorry.
Good one, though.
But that's interesting. That's goodness. That is quite an endeavor. Nick, would you like to go ahead and kind of branch to our next question?
Absolutely. So, as far as, and this is sort of for anybody who's been keeping up with the fan works at all, I know Greg specifically he's sort of inexorably intertwined with us, whether he likes it or not. And for anybody else who might have, does anybody have a specific fan addition or common fan suggestion that you guys see as something you would have added or something that you enjoy, even if it's not something that would have originally come about?
That's beyond me, I'm afraid.
Understandable.
Well, I mean, I think for me, what really jumps out at me is the stuff that we did for Dark Hunters and the stuff that we did for Rahi, where we were able to, solicit fan creations and then work those characters into the story. Because I know for myself, when the stuff I was a fan of when I was a kid, if I had created something and it actually made it in the official story, I would have been over the moon about it. So, especially for Dark Hunters, we got such fascinating characters that these kids created, and it added so much depth to that organization.
Actually,
Can I say something?
I do. Sorry. Please, Christian, carry on.
No, it's just because I've tried to connect to all the mugging sort of community. I think that's fascinating that people who are really getting good at building with the building system and actually taking it further into the most amazing creations. So I've tried to actually friend all I can see on Instagram and try to sort of comment on their work and so on. And I think this is an amazing heritage coming out of Bionicle, because stuff has been built now that I would have it as art in a museum, or I would display it in my home if I could get hold of it. It's amazing creation coming out, and it's a building system it's not produced anymore. So it in some way it becomes more and more valuable, the stuff that's been built. And I think that's an amazing development of the fan community, that they are creating stuff themselves, they're printing stuff in 3D printers and so on. That's so positive and amazing, I think.
I take that one as a personal compliment, actually, but I agree with the sentiment overall. Alistair, you had a comment?
Oh no, it was actually a silly thing. In the early days, there used to be a fans' own builds, own mocks on the back page of the Lego magazine. I was sitting in the office in Slough waiting for Bob, just looking at this one. I saw this one on the back, and it was basically a sort of a bovine type of character, and they'd called it, the name they'd given it was spelled Mucau. Bob, that says moo cow.
I remember moo cow.
And it slipped through the editorial net. Obviously, nobody had spotted it. I think it was one of my favorites. Did moo cow ever make it into Bionicle?
I think briefly at one point. It's still known in the community to this day, even regardless of whatever the name got changed to. I think it was Maranui cow. It's something that we still call moo cow.
Excellent.
Some of us still have a beef with it for another time. So, real quick, we did actually have a question here, and Ms. Thompson, I understand you're on a little more of a timetable here, so I wanted to go ahead and get this question asked because you had an interesting note on it. So this is from Rory Mann and Zarkan of the Cyclones. Do not send the Cyclones our way. They ask, if you can remember, what was the thought process behind Makuta's motivations in Mask of Light? There's some dialogue from him that doesn't quite add up to his later motivations, such as sleep spares him pain, awake he suffers. It's a quote I relate to. And my duty is to the Mask of Shadows. And you said that's a great question, because as a serious answer, a funny anecdote.
Yeah, and so the reason I said that is at the end of the day, it expresses Makuta's motivation absolutely perfectly. And Henry and I had a big discussion about me dropping that into the first film, because it doesn't. There's no payoff to that in the first film. In fact, there's no payoff to that for about 4 years afterwards, when it's revealed that Makuta was keeping Matanui asleep in order that he could be built and healed, as we all know at the end of the story. But I left it there in the first film. Sorry, I hope that's not a plot spoiler, but after 30 years, I think we're okay. 20 years, I think we're okay. Okay with plot spoilers, right? But it was. I dropped it into the first film for exactly so it would be a question mark in your head as a viewer. That was exactly why it was there, and it was really setting up the long payoff for when Matanui would rise and we'd realise that actually Makuta wasn't really a bad person. He just had a tough job and a tough way of going about doing it. That was always the one of the things I tried to keep in mind, is that there was a thinking in Lego that there should be no good or bad Lego. Yeah. So the idea that it's kind of that's moved on a bit, I think, in terms of the current thinking. But at the time, there was a reticence to have good and bad Lego, and my logic to deal with that was the fact that Makuta actually had an important and tough job, and he was going to do it properly, and that was his motivation as a villain. So it was always that there. But the trouble with that line, and we had a lot of use of the word duty in the first movie, and the reason that was funny is that we had, and I'm trying to remember the name of the actor, couldn't actually say duty without it sounding like duty. So you can imagine how that line reads. I'm going to do my duty, and of course, Terry and David and I were giggling like schoolboys in the sound booth, trying to get this actor to pronounce the T a little bit more. Can you do? And he was slow down. He was having to do this really deep voice, so he couldn't hit the T at all. And poor Sue Shakespeare had to deal with it, because we were in such hysterics we couldn't finish his recording. So anyway, that's the funny story behind that. So just you don't want to know about Makuta's duty.
No.
I love that for a variety of reasons. Lee Takar, we still appreciate you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, Lee was a great actor, by the way.
Oh, he's incredible. His range, holy Toledo, it's incredible.
Yeah, because he was Makuta, and I forget, he was a Matoran as well, wasn't he?
He was Kongu in the second movie.
Yeah.
Little guy being dangled upside down. Like, no, wait.
So I've got a tiny little boy. No, I'm down here.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, Lee was a great actor, but yeah, getting him to say duty needed a lot of takes.
This has added some context for a project I worked on, which made it just way better. Thank you for that.
A lot of this has been vindicating to, I think, a lot of the creative processes for any collaborative Bionicle fan work, but creative work overall. As veterans of the industry, I do have one sort of thing to sort of dovetail off from Makuta with, though. You made mention at the beginning where Lego was a little bit reluctant to have evil Lego versus good Lego, like morality injected into everything. That obviously became more of a theme after Bionicle. I mean, I think it was Exo Force or something along those lines was the one that comes to mind immediately, where there's a deliberate antagonist sort of thing going on. But as far as Bionicle specifically was concerned, how did you guys, and this question is aimed a little bit more at Martin and Greg specifically, dealing with making Toa look both menacing and fearsome and heroic? How did you guys deal with that? What was how did you strike that balance?
I think just quickly on the product design, Now I have my two favorites here. We're in the process of moving house. So I was in the attic the other day, and hence I rediscovered all the stuff. It's been sitting there for too long.
Yeah,
these are up here actually.
But exactly the axe here. I remember a discussion when it was sort of being materialized, and we were going into gate meetings, and the vice president responsible for the whole area sort of challenged us on the axe here, and we deliberately always called it tools. Consistently, everything they carry is a tool.
Yeah,
That much we have. It's very deliberate coding that always resonated with me for some reason.
But anything in it was about triggering imagination, triggering fantasy. Don't tell kids what they can figure out themselves. Give them the space to figure out whether it is a tool or it's a piece of battle gear, whatever you want to make it. Because it was about, it sounds a bit lame, but it was about empowering these kids, giving them a toy that could spark their imagination, could open up the play scenarios, that could take them in interesting directions. But of course, take it to a level where we could make some very compelling, interesting graphics and visualizations, leading to you, Christian, because I think that's what drove a lot of the look and feel for Bionicle was the first time Lego really sort of co-created, or the slice of Robo Rider Bionicle was sort of co-creating campaign development, visual assets with product development, and letting that influence product development to a much larger degree than before. So I think it was constantly sort of feeling, where do we need to sort of put it? Where do we need to put the line? Christian, you again, you have a slightly longer history than me on the early days on a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, but I think also taking it into 3D for the first time, and actually trying to believe that these characters are actually alive inside a story universe. That was the first time we did that. I remember when we did the Star Wars stuff, we were taking pictures of all the models and trying to integrate them into the different Star Wars scenes, but it was the real models being photographed. So when we moved into, we did that with Slicer as well and Robo Riders. That was actual photographs of the models put into a scenery. But with Bionicle, we did the first 3D renderings to come on to package and so on, but also for the commercials. And actually stepping into the 3D scene like that was, that was the first, and it was, I think, we haven't looked back since, but it was nice to be part of that revolution, I think.
I appreciate that insight very much. It's I do think that the time where you hit the dichotomy, probably best in my personal view, was during the beginning of Ignition, where you had the Paraka on one end and the Toei Nika on the other, and like you hit the Paraka's menacing tone really, really well, and the new armor style, the sword, and big ball blaster thing. Like I think that was just where it was struck the best in my personal opinion, but I could go on.
So real quick, since I understand, again, we know you're on timetable. We had a couple of quick things before you leave us for the morning, Mr. Thompson. First of all, to all of you, again, there were a lot of people that asked a lot of questions, and obviously we won't have the time to ask all of them. But a lot of users wanted to thank all of you for creating and curating the lore and the overall theme of Bionicle over the course of your careers. It has obviously been influential in massive ways to a great many deal of people over the decades. So thank you to all of you.
You're very welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
It remains a pleasure.
Yeah, you forget how much fun we had doing it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
It's very apparent.
To still get fans now getting hold of you on Twitter or wherever, asking these incredibly detailed questions about something that you wrote 20 years ago, which you have no hope of answering at all. But the fact that there is still this devotion 20 years later is quite humbling. It really is.
I actually had a parent write me last week asking if I would do a birthday video for his 6-year-old who reads Bionicle books.
That's
The whole
amazing.
generation.
I've done that,
Wow.
Greg. I did send a happy birthday to somebody once. Yeah.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
The I don't remember what the service is called. I'll make sure that it gets to you. But the gentleman who voices Master Chief from the Halo series has a little thing where you can
It's Cameo.
pay him to thank you, Cameo, where he does that just kind of consistently. I don't know how long y'all will be on there, but I guarantee you get some.
So real quick, 2 questions that obviously I want to ask before we have any departures. These are group questions, of course. First of all, Ms. Thompson, if you could go ahead and answer us first before you leave us, unless you want to stick around.
Actually, I can stick around because I had tickets, but COVID cancelled the tickets, so my evening out has been written off by.
You
lost
just
our game.
an excuse to get out early.
Okay, in that case, perfect. In that case, we'll have a fun group question for everyone. So this comes from Kyle Dawson. He asks, if you have any celebrity voice act a Bionicle character, who would they be and who would they play?
I'd love to hear Bill Nye do the Makuta.
So, in the event that this recording gets corrupted for some unfortunate reason, I'm writing that down.
I've got his voice in my head as a bad guy for a thing I'm doing at the moment. I can't get that out of my head. But him as a Makuta would be hysterical, and he'd probably be very good.
Might I suggest Biddle or Krika?
I'm sorry.
Might I suggest Biddle or Krika? Two of the 2008 Makuta.
Okay. I'm guilty of not following every strand. I'm afraid.
Are you even a real Bionicle fan?
I have always had the greatest respect for what Greg did with it after I left, because the universe expanded so vastly after I went. The inside of your head, Greg, must be a very strange place indeed.
It is, yes.
I think there's 2 Glatorian hanging around in there. Maybe that's unchristian.
Yeah. Well, who else? Anyone else? Any celebrity? Unless I will accept the role of Lewa if it's asked, and I will fight Dale Wilson in a firm handshake contest. Just saying.
Well,
it's on the table.
I tried to get Rutger Hauer to play Kopaka.
Oh wow, that would have been cool.
It would have been cool, but yeah, it didn't work out. But yeah, he was in town, and we were trying to get him for a day, just to do
Excellent.
the lines for that. But unfortunately, Rutger Hauer wasn't there, and I met him sometime later and berated him for not doing that. But
Anyone else? Head out.
I'm so bad with names, I can't remember.
Maybe here I'm like,
guy from the thing.
I haven't had coffee yet. My brain's not quite awake. Yes, that's my excuse.
I've been sipping some tea to try and wake up, so it's all right.
I should message somebody to bring me some.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
I could get into a tangent about tea, but I'm going to restrain.
No,
all right. In that case,
I think we all could actually, but
yeah.
So this is a question from RC Reeves 219, who asks. Actually, Nick, this is marked red. If you could go ahead.
Yes, I see. When you're all working on Bionicle in the early days, did you imagine that this would blow up the way that it did? I mean, I realized that there was a large amount of advertisement, especially in the early days, like it was the biggest thing, save Lego and all of that, the memes go on. But did you realize that it would be this big?
No, not with the first one. After the second, yeah, it kind of, you started to realize that. I think it was when Bob sent me, I think you were in New York for Christmas, Bob. He sent me a picture of a massive Bionicle electronic
Oh,
billboard.
that was the Toy Fair launch billboard. Yeah,
Yes.
that was a great moment.
This is getting big.
I think the moment for me was beginning of 2002. Carlos and Randy and Marty Pasco and I did a signing at Toys R Us Times Square, and we had 1,200 kids show up for that.
Wow.
Yeah, I clearly remember that because it was so funny. There were so many kids there that we actually needed to have a security person from the toy store walk us through and partying, the oceans of kids. And
I just remember Marty turning to you guys and going, "Enjoy this, because you're never going to have this many kids show up for something you do ever again."
No, but just like the visual of this huge guy that worked for the toy company, like moving through partying like this like ocean of kids who were like tiny at the time, was just like this super funny, like just the sight of that was so weird and abstract. But I remember in my case, when I jumped on, I had some of the earlier, like the plastic even was like all swirly and everything, right? And I remember showing the figures to one of my nephews, and right away he loved it. So it's like, I think it's impossible to know when something's gonna hit this big, right? Because you hope it does, but you just never know. And then something like magical happens, and then it takes off, right? So it's been a great pleasure to be part of something like this, because to be honest, as most of you know, you start working on something else, and then you jump on something else, and then you lose track of the thing that you were working on, and you just kind of go from project to project. It wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago that somebody had asked me to draw a character, and next thing I knew, it had made the rounds on the community. And people thought that maybe we were doing something new. And I was like, I had no idea that the community was still so alive. And it was so great to see that. Because to be honest, I again, you just kind of go to a new project and the new concern and the new deadlines. I had no idea all this was still going on. So it was such a rewarding experience to know that what was created was still making the waves now, Yeah. Very fortunate to be a small part of that, Yeah.
I can still close my eyes and see Kopaka stepping out of his canister. Mr. Donda, you are not a small part of this.
Thank you. From a visual standpoint, I mean, just seeing the acts behind you, my credit goes to all the design work and everything that happened on the toy line, right? Because as a kid from the 80s, and I love like Voltron and like G.I. Joe and all these properties that had some kind of like a mech, right? But I also so I've always been a huge fan of drawing that stuff, and I think that was actually why I was hired, because right before Bionicle, I was doing another project called Brass, which was all about like robots and all that, right? But I remember getting the initial figures, which were still like super rough, and just kind of like seeing how much thought went into all the pieces, right? Like just seeing the acts, it can go on and like oh, but you have the shocks that and the swivels, and like how much thought went into how these things actually move, which made it a pleasure to then in my own head be able to act with them before I drew them, right? Because there was just like the possibilities of movement there were so fun. And I think as speaking to my inner kid, that just engaged your imagination so much, So my kudos to all of you. Yes.
I think there was, for me, it was not like sort of one moment where I realized that this is gonna. There was a lot of indication that it would go big, because you follow it along and you pass certain milestones and you get a feeling for, okay, this is scaling, this is going up. Now the production team is asking whether we want to invest in yet another packaging line because the demand is there. And so, of course, you get a lot of these signals that it's going to get big. But I think creatively, when we started to see the first animations, when we started to have the first I don't know how wide they're shared in the community, but some of the very first visualization that nailed the tone of voice. Were these speed scenes with the solid canister sitting there and the opening and misty, very sepia-toned beat scenes. Sort of starting to see that coming in and starting to see the products materializing, and there was a feeling in the wider team that we are onto something here. And then just seeing the sheer numbers, the millions of kids that this franchise touched in those few years, it's just amazing. And then sitting here today with dedicated fans 20 years later, it's a massive honor, and I'm blown away that it's still alive. I think none of us had seen that happen to that extent.
No, it's.
Can I mention one thing? Because doing the poster where there's just one single Bionicle brick lying in the sand, and there's a mask in the background.
Yeah.
And we did this in 3D, and it was like, can we do this? It felt really sort of, because it was at the same time as Jurassic Park came out, where you had these bones. They discover, there's a lot about discovering bones of ancient creatures and so on. So we just felt, what if we did this rusty Bionicle bone lying in the sand? I remember also what's he called, who did this project about being on the island and actually discovering Bionicle. What's this guy's?
Kelly McKernan.
Kelly. he was a super fan, and he did this project, and seeing a fan do this, where you sort of discovered as if Bionicle had been on Earth, and you have uncovered this, that you saw fans actually interacting in this fantastic way. It made it sort of chills run down the spine. And I remember also seeing some of these images and actually putting music to it. We were really we used all those different sound. We used Jurassic Park themes and put it on, which means that we can never show this to anybody because of the rights and so on. But we used it in the meetings, and people were just like, what? Is this possible at all? And I just remember having those reactions where people were sort of actually seeing this as something that would make something totally new that I've never seen before, actually taking storytelling by Lego really seriously. And that feeling of being able to do that, I think, was a massive step internally. I had been working with Lego since '86, and suddenly getting to the point where storytelling became something that you actually felt that could move stuff. I think that was an amazing experience. And of course, seeing Toys R Us in Times Square having Bionicle all the way around the corner. I only have a really, really bad recording from a phone. I think it was one of the earliest phones that could take pictures. And I had this, it was one of my friends that was in New York. Have you seen this? And I had this video, and it's like, I think it's the worst quality ever.
144p.
That's the
or
only
something.
place I have it. Yeah. But I have it as a video, really, really sort of flaky. But seeing that was also amazing. Yeah.
Guys, can I be allowed to screen share? I'm not allowed to, so I don't know who hosts.
Give me 1 second. I'll see if I can't figure that out for you. But while I'm
share the image Christian and I are talking about, or one of them, of course. There are a lot
yeah.
But I have one of them handy. Yeah.
Also, apologies, Mr. Swinnerton. I think you were about to say something.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, understood.
No.
Well, you are now. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, there's one thing I'd like to just, just thinking about that particular time that I remember walking down the stairs inside the Lego's office in Slough in the UK, and it was about the week or the week after we launched, and there were two boys down there looking at the display of Bionicle cans that were all laid out, and they were discussing which one they were going to get next. There was like, I want the red one, and I want the blue one because he's the coolest. And the other boys turned around and said, "Ha! The blue one's girly. She's a girl. You don't know nothing." And we've been out a week or maybe 2 weeks, and it's just like, okay, we've actually delivered on making Lego something that kids can talk about with their friends.
I was very proud of one of the.
I think I phoned Alistair
definitely. Yeah. Remember when Vogue put Gali in a spread?
Oh, I've still got that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's a Vogue spread where they accessorized Gali.
Yeah, along with Barbie and all manner of other. They draped jewelry. It was a jewelry thing, but they used all these girl toys, and they used Gali, which was on the same double spread as Barbie. I thought, okay, I think we've made it here.
That's great.
Liam, don't like that. For our safety.
I just want to let you all know, if you haven't been keeping tabs on the Bionicle community, that interaction sums it up to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Persistent. So we're good.
The ongoing meme, I think, is that you throw a stick here in the US and you can probably find at least one kid out of 10 that said, oh yeah, I had the red one.
Green one was better. Anyway, we're gonna
I like them all.
Just real quick, it's more of a story technical question since we have so many different people here that obviously had a part in that. So Dave asks, sources differ. And again, it's a very story question. Sources differ on whether the Toa were supposed to gather the 6 Traga masks in addition to the 6 Great Ones. And different media showed them getting them and not. And of course, the Noble masks, the Traga masks, were part of LEGO Collectibles in 2001. So the question is, what characters were meant to collect these? What role did they play in the Collect the Masks?
Oh, I can't remember. It was 20 years ago.
It was something that the original idea was to have a legend behind every mask. But if you've got 12 characters wearing 12 masks each, you've suddenly got 144 legends. and a 6-month window in which to tell them. So
I remember drawing that chart on a whiteboard.
So we had to simplify things a bit. And in the computer games, there was a slightly different way of handling it because the masks allowed each different powers depending on who would wear them, in order to make the PlayStation game. And so some of the mask powers, some of the more obscure ones, were written with the intention of being usable for the PlayStation game, particularly. So there are some that don't really appear in canon at all, but had a purpose. They may be opened cheat codes or gave you special powers in the game, or did other things.
I'm going to take that to the bank, by the way. There are masks that were written for a game. I promise that makes sense if you do stuff in the community. But, thank you. As far as the broader context of Eljay, please bail me out. This would be a wonderful time for you to do that.
Like I said, I did bring on a professional.
Yeah, no.
So there's another good question. It's kind of a group question. And there's always talk of, will Bionicle come back? Will it be back? Will we have a third? Or a second, if you forget the second. And this question kind of pertains to that. This is from Docky1. I didn't say that right. Do you think Bionicle is still viable as a LEGO theme today, or is it just a product of its time, as many other adult fans of LEGO like to claim?
No, it could still work today. There's a depth of story that's still out there. We could give it a few more layers, couldn't we, Greg?
Oh yeah, we could have been doing stories for the last, all the years since it ended. But I think that the trick is we have to do what the original story team decided from the beginning, which was that it was going to be aspirational. That the story was going to be aimed at like a 10 or 11-year-old to get an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old interested in it. And I remember at one point, years into it, they were suddenly going, oh, well, let's do this for the younger kids. And Eric Wolf, who was the marketing director in the US, told me, he said, if you aim at every audience, you're not going to reach any audience. He said we have to stick with what we started with because that's what works. And I don't think Bionicle, it could work, but I don't think it works best aimed at a younger audience. I think it works best if you're aspirational with it because you can go into more depth in the story.
We, from an audience perspective, agree.
Yeah, 100%, 200%. We cloned ourselves and agree twice.
Yeah. Mr. Swinton, you had a remark?
No. I think I made my remark.
Okay, cool.
I can say when I see the fans, what they are building out there, it's like this is already moving into the next stage, I think, because they're using these building bricks to create stuff that is beyond the legend, but it's also continuing this whole creative process of Bionicle, where you have the yin yang. You know, it's like you break pieces apart to build new stuff. It's the whole biology idea about it, and I can't help but saying, you know, we're moving into a robotic age where you know, thinking machines will come about, and you know, what are the contents of these machines? Are that part of us, or where does that come from? I think there's a lot of questions in the Bionicle mythology that we are standing in front of, actually. So it's really present, I think.
To continue that thought, right? I think in some ways, well, I mean, first of all, I think like any good story never loses its strength, basically, right? And I think this one was such a classic story, and you know, kind of about like the elemental powers and all these things that they're pretty timeless in that sense, right? But something that you said, I think is very true. We are moving closer to these realities, and you know, and the questions of like nature and global warming and all these things. So I think if anything, in some ways, it's more relevant today, right? The coexistence of something that looks so high tech in nature, which for me was also so much fun to draw at the time, right? Because you had like these very thought out robots, and then you had to juxtapose them with jungle, with water, with you know, earth, fire, wind. And I think in many ways right now that question is even more present, right? So I think a good idea like that's so primal never loses its power, you know. Yeah.
When I see that Boston Dynamic robot running around in the woods, I don't know if you've seen those videos.
The dog
and the dog and so on. It's like, whoa, okay, this is actually they're gonna walk outside the window very soon. And will they be friendly, or what will they think? How will they see humanity? You know, are we the problem actually, or whatever? So I think we are heading into this kind of morale that we need to tackle, and I think that's why Bionicle will probably continue in some way.
Well, as I think you said, Christian, that the fans have taken it on and they're moving it forwards now, which is great, wonderful.
Not that we would be opposed to any help.
It's coming. Sorry.
Has anybody built a full-size tower out of, you know?
I'm working on it. It's taking me a little while.
There is a gentleman that I'm aware of.
I got this small one here.
What is that?
Damn.
Is that?
That was
Tower of Light?
That was made for me, but yes, the Tower of Light, and it was made for me by an artist in Santa Monica back in the day, and
that looks heavy.
Yeah, it's made out of stuff that was salvaged from junkyards, so you can imagine it.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It's a cool thing.
Yeah, talking to Uwe at Exotoa right now, and that's I was going to show it. Now I'm not, because it's way smaller than that.
I was actually thinking, what if there was a virtual Bionicle museum where stuff like this could be put in? It's just to say that there's stuff happening right now in the digital, you know, how to do galleries and so on. And I was thinking, you know, if you could host something where you could actually walk in with virtual equipment and see all these things, it would be possible to do a Bionicle sort of installation where you could actually witness a lot of the stuff that's been done earlier, but also pointing into the future. And just to say, I'm all into trying to get attention around these things, because I think what started back in 20 years ago, it's there's so much energy in that, and all those stories we're telling here, it's only a fragment of what we could talk about. And I think the most important thing is the interaction between us, and what we started out talking about, the unity, the united feeling, which also became part of the wording, unity, duty, destiny. And in some way we're living it, as I see it, and if I look at the planet now, we are these small beings on this island where nature has gone crazy, and we need somebody to step in, some elemental heroes to come in and show the way and find the reality behind this. So there's so many things that could be put into whatever you call it, third G or 3G or whatever, and it could be done without any sort of big monetary setup, because things are virtual right now, things are happening online, and talking like this, I think, is actually realizing that this could come in the future. But that's just me looking with my happy-go-lucky.
I would like to let you know that the fan base has definitely been looking into similar ideas that you just said, for both overall trying to help the world, because we all have to live in it, but also for archiving both digitally and physically as much of Bionicle that we can get our hands on.
Yes, but just the stuff that Bob showed there, finding those things that are really amazing and unique and spreading it out. I think I have a lot of stuff in my stowed away that I would love to sort of just give to the community and make accessible, but I haven't found the exact right way to do it yet. But yeah,
I'll see about working on something.
Yes.
Maybe just a thought, and I know that was not what was in that question, but combining that with also you hinted to the fact that in the AFOL community there are some debates on whether the longevity of Bionicle. I think it's a universal. The story in its core is a very great universal story. The colors, the heroes, so at the core, I think it's very universal. But maybe also just to share some perspectives on that. I think what we started doing with Bionicle set the precedence. I'm not saying that we are the grandfathers of this all future Lego success. I'm not saying that, but the way of working created a precedence for how to work with IPs. So without these experiments, Ninjago would have been difficult. A lot of Lego Friends would have been difficult. A lot of everything else going on sort of in the last 20 years would have been difficult without these early experiments into combining campaign development, product development, story development, and sort of getting everything intervened, doing it very fast and agile. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest legacies internally at Lego, that it was pioneering new ways of working, creating a new way of basically bringing stories to kids, and doing it not in contrast, but really in a collaboration between all these different medias. So I think that's, for me at least, the biggest legacy.
It's a new way of thinking.
Yeah. I think that's true.
If you want a title, use a phrase that Bob came up with a long time ago. Just call it smart heroic thinking.
Right, and
we could use some of that in general.
Yeah,
I think
in life
these days.
Yeah. But I think there's another thing that is unique in the Bionicle universe, because I don't think I've never come across another story universe where you've had to have this idea of 6 heroes. The idea of having, there's the Magnificent Seven and all those kind of concepts, but they've all got a central character that underpins the whole story. And I think one of the things that I think really resonated was the fact that, yes, and Greg and Alistair will nod knowingly with me on this. It is a huge pain to try and write stories with so many characters and no defined central hero. But I think that the flip side is for the audience, it means that there's always somebody like you that you can bring to the heart of the story, whichever. Because we were very consciously making the six Toa or the six Matoran or the Turaga that we would have in each season. We would consciously make them like very, very different people. And that difference, someone might be a Liwa and someone might be a Kapaka. Totally poles apart, but it meant that there was always someone like you, whatever kind of kid you are, to latch onto in the story. And I think a lot of films and a lot of franchise IP, it tends to be there's one hero and you have to identify with that one hero, or it doesn't matter. So while it's incredibly difficult to tell stories with so many characters, so many heroes, and servicing all of that, actually it does give an entry point for everybody.
But Bob, can I just say on that, because I think in some way it was an invention of the new kind of hero that we actually, when we look at reality, we need that kind of hero that is more we than he. Yeah. And that's why, and actually Vero, W-E-R-O, that is a word from the Maui dictionary, which means it's used as a welcoming, where you are saying, "I come in peace," and in some way it's a beautiful thing, because if you move from hero to Vero, and it's not to say that you should like this expression, but I'm thinking in that way that we need the heroes that are more thinking we than he, and for some nice reason it also relates to being a weak hero, So if you combine weak with hero, you get a Vero, and I think it's realizing your weaknesses and actually getting other people to fill out instead of trying to be everything. And when I look around the world at the people who makes a difference these years, people inventing vaccines, people speaking about global warming and so on, those are the weakest people, but they actually they stand by their weakness, which makes us the other people actually join in, and then it becomes powerful. So together we are strong. I think that is the most essential thing coming out of Bionicle, and I love that we are sitting here 20 years later, actually maybe being able to agree on that, because that gives a lot of hope for the future, I think.
How crazy is that, right? Like, we're talking about this 20 years later, during a global pandemic. And
exactly.
We're talking about, like how you were saying, it's like the people at the grocery stores, the essential workers, right? It's like all the unsung heroes, the ones that have proven to have carried us through this, right? So it's like, and that goes back to the concept, right, of what Bionicle was so. I mean, just the fact that the fans still love it so much from a lore standpoint just goes to show how timeless the idea was. And it's like, it's crazy. It's like, it's been 20 years and we're surviving a global pandemic. It's like, it's, somebody told me that 20 years ago, and I've been like, no, you're crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Just 2 years ago, this would have been a crazy situation, I think. So it's like, But I'm thinking if we can unify around these things, imagine what we can do further on. And I think that is why Bionicle is so cool. It's that thought of being a unique group that actually can make a difference. I think both for the inside the Lego organization in the old days, where we actually felt, we had some new power that we had to find out how to use. And then it goes out to the fans who has this new power as well. And then it continues to 20 years later. And when you look around now, it's like, that's what people are surviving. They're surviving by unifying or by standing together. And I think it's, sorry for being a bit of a crybaby, but I think that is beautiful.
Absolutely.
So I don't know about you others.
Wouldn't be you, Christian, if you weren't.
I have 2 teenage daughters. I get reality checks all the time. They're like, Daddy, get away from those toys, get real and so on. So I get checked all the time.
my kids were, my son was 10, I think, when Bionicle first came out. So all I got all the time was all his friends going, "Can you get us the toys? Can you get us the toys?" And the parents going, "It's your fault I'm broke."
But now you can find it from the basement or from the attic, and then I bet you in a little while those Bionicle bricks will be worth. Yeah,
I'm afraid most of mine were donated.
Oh dear.
I have a few things. I still have my Bionicle duvet, however. So
wow.
You've got the. That's amazing.
Bionicle. It's a single.
Right. I don't know that they made those in Queen.
I still have that, and the T-shirt. Of course, I should be wearing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that prototype Lewa that Martin and Christian were playing with in the background while I was trying to re-pitch the story and bill it all those years ago.
Oh, I need to ask one about that, because all those prototypes, Martin, do you know if they are hit anywhere? Because the ones that you did as prototype that they had one color, they were like gray or sprayed with the chrome.
I think of course it's horrible to sit now with dedicated fans this many years ago and then think about in the development process how much that just get junked, because it's a process and who cares.
I can't remember who gave it to me. I think one of you gave me that one from that meeting. I still have it somewhere. I can't find it. I know I've got it somewhere. Still with a little production side.
There's a lot of prototypes and Legos having a very strong archive. And I went to see the idea Lego house when it opened, and the archives in the basement. And they have kept stuff, but what they have, no idea. What is stored, what is kept, I think is what people sort of sneaked out to keep as a small token to remember the days. Everything else has gone.
One thing my son remembers the most, I think, was the day that Martin arrived with Bob at our house, bearing this enormous box full of toys.
Wow.
He was very happy. He came, I think Martin got there first, but my son came home from school with some of his friends, and to be presented with this vast box full of new Bionicle.
I remember the back of my car was full. It was I think it was the whole 20, was it? It would have been 2002 series.
I think it was. Yeah.
Woo! It was a fairly large year, if I remember right.
You have to make up. You have early on working for Lego. You have to make up your mind whether you're going to collect and store, or whether you're not going to do it. Because of course you come across a lot of opportunities, and I'm one of the guys that no, I simply cannot. I don't have the space to store all this, and it doesn't really make sense. But I did keep one of my all-time favorites, mint, unboxed with stickers on, and that is the Toa Nuva.
Very nice.
So, it still sits here together with, I don't know what happened with these guys. How about these guys?
Oh yeah, you got this one too?
Oh yeah.
Oh, snap.
I don't have a single canister. I'm being shown up in grand fashion here, guys.
I would need to run to a walk-in closet on the opposite side of this building to grab mine. So I'm.
Yeah, no,
I need to show you something else.
Oh, what is that?
Oh,
what? Yeah, what is that?
Why is he mooning us?
What's that?
Okay.
I'm not gonna say anything more.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say one thing. I'm working with mocap right now. Motion capture.
Yeah.
And I'm working. Yeah. No. Motion capture suits where you become the character.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying anything. I hope that I can share something with you. But I can say that that's definitely an amazing experience to see our old friends in a new way.
Okay.
Very nice.
A few things. First of all, in regards to the whole collecting or storing or discussion, I just want to say, anyone who made the decision not to store, made a fairly reasonable one. I will tell you right now. It's literally everything, guys. That is all of it. It's over 50 feet in length.
Wow.
Wow.
So just to add to that conversation. Otherwise, we did have a couple more questions. Obviously enough, we could talk to you guys for literal hours. There is plenty to discuss. But of course, we value your time and we know it is not infinite. So we do have a few more questions and it will kind of lead to some discussion. This is a group question from Hirora Nui, who asks, and this is kind of as a lead in, a lot of people discuss and debate what the core of Bionicle is. Some people will say it's the product. Some people will say it's the story. Some people will say it's the atmosphere. So this question asks, broadly and philosophically, what do you believe Bionicle was truly about as a story?
Kristen said it earlier. Together we are strong.
I have to bail out. I have to bail out now, guys. So unfortunately, I have to leave. But you have my contact info. Reach out if there's anything. To answer that question before I bail out, I think it's a combination of those elements. But that's my personal opinion, and I'm not saying there's no truth or anything, but that's at least where I'm coming from. But guys, it was great seeing you all. I unfortunately have to run.
Martin,
good to see you, Martin.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming by. It's very much appreciated.
As Bob just said, together we are strong. I think that's the core of Bionicle.
It's not any single piece. It's all of the pieces, all of the magic, all of the team. It's the assembled universal world.
Yeah.
Because it's
I also think that
people.
It's like a building system of story where the more, if you have a single piece, it's really cool. It's like a single scene. But if you have more, you can put new pieces together with your own imagination in between. I think that way of thinking story and world building is I think the best ever because it's open ended.
Okay, no, that's more than reasonable. That makes plenty of sense. Okay, in that case, we're gonna kind of start to wrap up. This again has been fantastic, and again, a lot of people really wanted to express their appreciation for all of your time and all of your efforts curating this, because it's 20 years later and there are still so many things being made and done and so many endeavors that are being pursued. So it's truly spectacular. All right, I think we'll go ahead with maybe two more. Nick, if you want to go ahead and just toward the top of the screen here, I'll go ahead and highlight this.
The one from Andrew Kirk? Or is that not? Or are you not the anonymous penguin?
Nah, don't do that one. Let's go ahead with. I think this one's a good one.
I kind of agree. So I know we kind of said that the biggest strength of Bionicle is it all works best together, be it a team, be it the multimedia, be it everything. But if you had to boil it down to a single element of Bionicle, what would you say your favorite part of the storyline actually was? I love the contemplative. No, I love the contemplative faces. That means that you're thinking super hard about it, which I love.
I'll go with Moo Cow. I have no idea. You can't narrow it down to one single piece. It was a whole.
I think one of the parts that was most enjoyable for me to write was the evolution of Makuta and him turning into a character who basically lets you win so you're not paying attention to what he's actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
The master schemer. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah.
So we have the cow.
The whole idea of I always have 15 plans going on at the same time, so if one doesn't work out, I've got the other 14.
Banking on failure. Always a lot of fun. So we have schemer that can literally kill a universe. Cow.
Yeah.
We run the gamut here.
I'm going to go with Tahu surfing on lava. as a keen surfer, that's beyond my extremes.
Don't let your dreams be dreams. I believe in you if you get the right suits, the right suit of material.
One day the suits will be right, and the lava will be just curling perfectly out the volcano. But I'm going to leave that to younger, more stupid people.
All right,
they will.
I'll be right back.
Who don't mind wearing lava-proof suits?
You wouldn't sink. That's
I know.
fact of lava.
I've been in some heavy waves and heavy lava. I don't need that.
Fair enough.
I've seen what bacon does on a skillet. It'd be about that.
Yeah.
Fine. I really, when Martin was here, he was talking a little bit earlier. This reminded me somehow of these being tools and how kind of they could be whatever a kid would want them to be. Kind of inspire them. And I really wish I had a quick thinking to just say I love my spatula. Fantastic. I don't know how cooking got me on that, but regardless.
Make a heck of a carpet beater as well.
Do you own any rugs, Eljay? That's actually a good question.
Yes.
Like one that you can pick up and okay.
No.
Okay.
So, all right.
But I think we still needed to hear from Mr. Faber and Mr. Danda.
You guys got?
It's hard to pick one, right? But I would imagine it's those first 3-4 pages, right? It's like that was my own introduction to the characters, and just drawing those like small, like they were like crabs, I think, right? Going through the sand, and then the canister, and again, it's just crazy to think that something that in the day you're just worried about the deadline and making sure that is this drawn correctly, does it look cool? So I was just having a conversation with a friend about this, right? It's like drawing is so insular because it's just you on your desk or whatever, that you never really know how it's going to be affecting somebody else. And then when you do realize that, it's a very humbling experience, right? So for me at the time, I was just like, does this look correct? Is this how they should move? And then you realize that this was something that was connecting to a young kid at the time, right? And now that kid is probably 30, right? And that's such a cool, humbling experience of being a small part of that story. Yeah.
No, I get that.
Understandable. Mr. Faber, I realized that you had a bit of a cameo back there. I don't know whether or not you're pressed for time.
No.
Just checking.
It's just but I will. For me, it's like the mystery. I think it's the mystery of discovery of new worlds and so on. And I think the combination of the technology of the robot and then this nature thing of the island, that combination is so amazing. I think because in some way you can recognize all the mechanical stuff you have in your everyday life, and all the inventions that humans have been doing to survive, and then you have this nature up against that's this unbreakable force that is just constantly trying to break you down. And I think that we're getting older. That's what you experience. You understand that you are sort of a weak robot trying to compensate all the time and trying to still be optimistic and look into new mysteries, new stories. But I think these facts of life is in some ways they are inside this story. I think, which makes it fun to explore continuously.
Thank you very much, and that's inspiring on a very large level.
I hear the point about weak robot, but I'm a weak robot with an axe.
You have a tool, yeah.
A little bit ahead. Okay.
Not an axe. It's not an axe. It's a spatula. Remember?
Yeah. But when you go into the hardware store, when that's how you feel. You get older and older, and you see all these tools that can help you in the garden and so on, which is like it's sort of the same feeling. Technology, yes.
A newest clause, for example, always good at getting those little weed roots out.
Yeah.
You could do that. That thing could do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I loved. I mean, one of the great joys of it for me was as somebody said earlier, the design of every little piece. I mean, you look at that. I mean, obviously that's that big, but in reality, it was that big, and that the attention to detail in the toys was just astonishing. It really was.
It's remarkably impressive, and especially all the different ways that it was brought to life, obviously.
Yeah.
In the films, in the comics, even in the novels, where the visualizations could be so solid in your mind. It definitely had a life of its own. And yeah, of course, stuff like this, they're just upscale pieces, just straight up upscale pieces. And it's a testament to how involved and how in depth everything was. And that's why a lot of us in the Bionicle community, we get a little bit dismayed when some other groups of adult fans of Legos, they kind of dismiss it. Well, it doesn't look like Lego, which of course we feel is a little short-sighted, but everyone has their own perspective and opinion. So it's still cool.
A prevailing opinion is that most hater AFOL groups can kind of bite us. So
it didn't look like Lego. That was the joy of it. It was it was brand new. I mean, obviously, Robo Riders and Sliders they sort of set started the path, but it was like nothing Lego had ever done. It was charting new territory.
It needed that provocation. I think the whole product development needed to be provoked from internally almost.
Sure.
To see things in a new way. I think that you're totally right, Alistair.
And they were very scared at the beginning, I remember. We've got characters hitting other characters. No, we can't do that. I
recall the discussions around tools and replicable violence. Of course, you're not allowed to do that. So that's great. We've got a thing that looks like a sword, but we can't use it as a sword. What can we do with it? And actually, that forced some new kinds of creativity to come. To come forward.
That's true.
Again, I go back to your phrase, smart heroic thinking. I mean, that's how we got around it.
So, one kind of specific question, just for the sake of it. So, calling anything that might have looked like a weapon tools, fine to try to get around that. But everybody was, and speaking on behalf of my arachnophobe friends, but the spiders for an entire year, that was fine.
Spiders are lovely. What's the problem with
that? Like spiders.
I don't personally have a problem with spiders, but I've got a lot of friends that have a very severe sort of reaction. So
yeah, I on the other hand am deathly arachnophobic. So we're gonna skip past the spiders. I'm good.
Didn't know that.
So
okay, guys, I'm gonna have to dip out, I'm afraid. So if you have one final question for me or not, I don't know.
We do. So this is going to be kind of our last question for the evening, and if you kind of answer this one, Sigma asked, "What are you all working on these days?" And Mr. Swinnerton, if you would.
Well, I'm actually world building again for a new project that I can't actually talk about, but I think I'm allowed to say it's from a Anglo-Indian Singaporean consortium. It's basically creating a universe out of a bunch of classic Indian superhero comics and melding them into one universe. That's about as much as I can say, I think. Building a whole new world for these characters to inhabit, and then there's movies being made.
The individual who asked that question specifically, I know is going to be thrilled beyond words that for whatever project that is in particular.
It's pretty exciting. It's in the pipeline now. It's a long pipeline. Hopefully. So that's what I'm doing. And there are 3 movies currently in development. I'm writing the second one. And consulting on developing the whole thing, and then consulting just general megalomaniac stuff,
That is awesome. That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah, it's
thank
fun.
you.
But
Thank you.
I have to say I'm very much using what we learned, what we created, whatever on Bionicle. That was very much a benchmark of how to do it. So that's cool. It's not that the Indians went, "Wait, hey, you made Bionicle, come and do that with this." If I had $1 for every time somebody said that, I'd have like $5.
Hey, that's a sandwich. That's a free sandwich.
Anyway, yeah. So that's what
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we can do so again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, Eljay. Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you.
And Liam, of course. Yeah, guys. Yeah, great to see you all. Christian, it has been a long time. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. We must keep in touch. Definitely.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And good luck with the projects.
Thank you, Ella, and you for your museum. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And of course, for everyone else, please, what are you all up to? Because obviously, Bionicle is where it is now. So, what are your current endeavors? If you could talk about them.
So, shall I follow on from Alistair? Because that's easy. Because I'm working on a development of a movie with some Indian, Singaporean, British finance that I can't talk about. But also I'm working, I've got another film that I wrote the script for a couple of years ago that's gone into production, which again, I can't tell you what it is, but it'll be out in 2022. And I'm working for a completion guarantor, and I'm also developing with a company called Hexology, a new form of social digital media, which is just about finished. The app is going to be available later this year, hopefully for beta use. And it'll allow you to post content into places that you haven't been able to place content before.
Interesting.
Look out for Hexology come the fall.
Cool.
Yeah, there's my shameless plug. And I'm also a trustee of a charity, and I've been teaching. So it's kind of some cool.
Very nice.
So,
What do you teach? Just out of my own curiosity.
It's been there's a Pearson University has a animation and visual effects school in London called Escape Studios, and I've been recently the course mentor for the Masters in Arts, so animation visual effects. In this case, modelers made it.
Very nice.
So.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? What have your endeavors been?
I'll go next. I've been working a lot on a pretty cool new project, but it's also NDA City, right? So can't talk much about it. But besides that, I've continued to do covers for Dark Horse and DC, doing a little bit of teaching as well. But yeah, like the bulk of it has been on this pretty cool new project that hopefully we'll have something soon. But yeah, it's a ton of work that nobody can see, kind of thing. Yeah, the usual, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fair. That's fair.
Gotcha.
All right. Any other NDAs? What else?
Should I go then? I'm working on a world building project called Rebel Nature, and there's no NDA because this is a new way of trying to approach by showing everything and giving everything away instead of trying to sort of put it into NDAs and so on. So we've been sort of posting a lot of things, and we are actually connecting with a lot of artists around the world to contribute. We're talking about giving them NFTs out of what they do and using that as sort of payment for creative work. Looking into this new blockchain economy, creator economy, I think that's really interesting. So I'm not saying that I'm into Bitcoins or anything. I'm just saying something new is going to happen with the way creativity is bought and sold. I think it's definitely going to happen, and it's going to be big. And I would really love to know about that. So right now it's the early days, but I think it looks really interesting if you can actually be part of projects and get paid in a new way. So that's one of the things we're trying to do with Rebel Nature, but we also try to tell stories around the 17 global goals for UN. We try to use that as a story engine. So those are actually the big robot underneath the island of the new story. All these challenges we are facing as humans, and we want to use that as creative inspiration. And so that's what I can talk about. And then I have actually worked with Lego on virtual productions. We recently did a vlog with the mocap for Ninjago.
You were involved in that?
Yeah, that's our project.
Very interesting.
This is what Whiplash feels like.
So get ready for new stuff coming in that direction. That is going to open a totally new door in many ways. And also to just, we're working together with a gaming company doing live, using live engines from gaming to do film productions actually, because the quality is getting so high. And also experimenting with the digital humans, trying to create our main characters from Rebel Nature, Res Wayborn, as a digital human, so we can put her into amazing new scenes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. Farstein, is there anything that?
Well, I'm still doing my day job, which is basically running the Lego magazine, and I haven't had any Lego-related freelance in about 5 years, so I'm working on writing for grown-ups again because I miss killing characters. Because in my pre-Lego books, the bodies were stacked like cordwood, so it was very hard for me to adjust to, you can't hit anybody.
I remember you talking about that whenever we were having that conversation about like Godzilla and your time with West End, and that brings joy to my heart.
Well, that is fantastic, and I know I don't just speak for myself when I say that so many people are interested to see what you will all do next. Obviously, you've all had a huge impact on why we're all here and what we're all passionate about, and whatever you guys get into next is immensely exciting. I will just say, when you guys are ready to make that feature film Liwa movie and you need a stunning new voice, let me know. I'm prepared. In any case, I think that'll do it. Is there anything any of you guys would like to say to the greater community to kind of camp off today's Bionicle Day?
This is just the beginning.
for me, very quickly after all this time, to meet some of you on the team that I hadn't had the pleasure to know you, and to all the fans that have been following this so faithfully this whole time. Thank you very much. You're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he said.
Great words. Yeah.
All right. In that case, I think that'll do it. Again, thank you all so very much for all of your time today, and of course, everything that you've contributed to something that so many have contributed to. It's phenomenal. It's obviously something immensely special to so many people, which is obviously why we are here. Thankfully, getting the chance to talk to you all today. Been a pleasure. We hope that we can talk to you all individually again in the future. We could talk to you all for hours. Just hours. So, all right, that'll do it. Thank you all so very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this fantastic 2-hour block of unbelievably awesome information and fun. So, thank you once again to everyone. I have been Eljay Johnson.
And I've been Lehari.
And we hope you're enjoying Bionicle Day 2021. We'll see you soon.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a great one, everybody.
Thanks for now.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It was in those days I discovered our destinies are not written in stone. We have to find them for ourselves. I found mine. Now it's time for you to make new legends. For that is the way of the Bionicle.